Now that we've talked about general strategies for wildlife damage management, another very important thing we need to talk about are regulations and laws regarding wildlife. And believe me, there are plenty of them out there. So there's federal law, state law, and local laws that you may have to abide by or at least be aware of. We'll start off federal law. The Canada goose in the upper left is an example of a migratory species. And any animal that is migratory, which means that it spends part of its time in more than one state or more than one country, that animal automatically becomes a federal species. So, if you have a migratory species, you have to abide by federal law, and it's very likely that not only will you have to abide by federal law for migratory species, but you also will have to pay attention to state law. So, for example, with that Canada goose, if you wanted to make physical contact with that goose, either to catch it and pet it or catch it and wring its neck, or you wanted to lethally control that goose by harvesting it, you would have to abide by federal law and pay attention to federal law. So that is one example of laws and regulations at the federal level. There are also plenty of state laws. So any animal that is a state wildlife species, such as the squirrel that you see in that middle picture there, and a state wildlife species is an animal that stays within the confines of the state boundary. So any animal that's a state species, our state wildlife agency has sole jurisdiction over that species, and they can then determine whether the species is a game animal, a non-game animal. If it's a game animal, which means that you can harvest that animal, then they determine can you harvest the animal by trapping it, by harvesting it by gun, bow, whatever the case might be. If it's a game animal, they also dictate what time of the year can you harvest that animal, how many animals can you harvest per time, and things like that. So state laws are also very important to pay attention to. And then you also may have to abide by local laws. And a good example of a local law, we've already talked about one where you cannot discharge a firearm within most municipal boundaries. But a lot of local law ordinances also dictate noise, for example. So if you wanted to use that propane cannon in the lower picture there, that is a great big loud noisemaker to scare primarily birds out of an area. Well, in most municipalities, they have local noise ordinances, which mean that you cannot emit a noise above a certain decibel. And believe me, propane cannons would violate that noise ordinance in a heartbeat. So that's another example of sometimes you have to abide by local ordinances depending on what your strategy is. Now, with all of that being said, you can ignore everything I've just said if you are not going to touch the animal, make physical contact with the animal, or harm the animal in any way, harm or kill it. If that's the case, then you don't have to worry about any federal state laws, and the only thing you may have to abide by are local regulations for local ordinances or zoning regulations if you want to put a fence up, for example. The other huge caveat here, the other large gray area, is within the state of Wisconsin, they also have some exemptions. So, if you are dealing with or experiencing damage caused by groundhogs, coyotes, fox, squirrel, skunk, raccoon, rabbit, beaver, things like that, and the damage is occurring on property you own, at any time of the year, you are allowed to kill that animal causing the damage without a hunting license, as long as it's legal for you to kill the animal in the area you are. So, for example, although it's legal for you to kill a rabbit any time of the year on your property where the damage is occurring, it may not be legal for you to kill that rabbit using a gun because local laws prohibit you from discharging a firearm within that municipal boundary. So there are a lot of laws and regulations out there. There are also some gray areas out there or caveats, but it is incumbent upon you to be aware of all laws and regulations before you undertake any management options.